Welcome to the Canarian International Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mossy and I am an alcoholic.
And my name is Mick, and I'm also serving as your secretary today. Please join us for a few moments silence to remember the still suffering alcoholic, both inside and outside this meeting.
Stephen is going to read the preamble for us.
Hi, my name's Stephen. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. AA has no dues or fees. It is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Thank you, Stephen, and a warm welcome goes out to anyone new or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous.
The chat is now now disabled until the end of the meeting, except for the meeting host. If you feel the meeting security is at risk at any time during the meeting, please private message one of the co-hosts and they will sort it out.
And that's it, folks. That's the introductions done. Our speaker today, Arlene, it's lovely to see you there. Our speaker today is Philip. I met him the other day. Well, I met him a while back. But we sat down and had a chat the other day, and I had a feeling my speaker wasn't going to turn up, so I roped in Philip. So, Philip, you have about 40 to 50 minutes to share. And I know you have an interesting story after speaking to you. So, take it away, my friend. It's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Philip and I'm an alcoholic. Could we please just have a moment silent to remember the alcoholics still suffering inside and outside the rooms? I think I'll start at the beginning if I've got to talk for a long time. So I was born in the 1950s and I grew up on a farm till I left home at the age of 16. And I could tell you 900 million reasons about my miserable childhood, my parents drinking, I was raped, bullied, kicked on, spat on, etc., etc., etc. However, how I see it now is the privilege of growing up on a farm with so much wildlife. And as a child, I was very aware of the seasons, the birds nesting, the baby ducks and goslings, all that wildlife, and the higher power for me. I am a Catholic and I go to church most weeks, but my higher power is out there, it's nature. And when I take my dog for a walk, I try to be centered on listening and looking what surrounds me and feeling that comfortable feeling of nature. So, that's how the way I see it today. So I drank very young. I think it's about 12 years old. My parents went out and they had a drinks cabinet. And I always say this, I got this mug, I poured a little bit of drink in each mug, from each bottle into the mug, filled it up, drank it, went and laid on my bed, and it was like the best feeling ever. It was the wooziness, the tingling. It was just absolutely amazing. And it just changed me. It took away that dread, the hole in the soul, not feeling that I belonged. And I cottoned on very quickly because I was away then. Instead of going to school, I would go to the pub. And I was quite mature for my age, so I'd get away with it. And nobody really asked in those days whether you were underage or not. So, my drinking took off really quickly. And yes, there are other kids that went to the pub like me, but they didn't end up waking up in a ditch at a party or being carried home. I remember one evening I must have gone out about 6. By 7:30, I was delivered home, more or less unconscious. It was just like it just had that trip on me. It just affected me really quickly, and it was like they say the consequences. You see, I don't know about the line of crossing when you become an alcoholic. there were consequences from the word go. So when I was a teenager, I had car accidents, blackouts, stomach pumps, hospitals, all that stuff. By the time I got to AA, I had to have it. So somewhere along the line, even though my drinking was never right, once I had one, I was always off. So I didn't necessarily always drink in the morning. It didn't sort of come upon me till I actually got out in the evening and I had one, and then I was off. But by the time I got to AA, I had to have it. So there was no question of a mark. I had to have it. The power of, the cunning, baffling, powerful, it just had me. So anyway, so there were car accidents, stomach pumps, and my poor parents, God bless them, they were addicts. My father found my mother dead in the chair. I'd have been about 2 years sober at the time, and she had her pint of wine with a dash of orange juice by the side. And my father died later, throat cancer, probably through smoking and huge quantities of neat whiskey down his throat. So I'm well aware the addiction runs in my side of the family. And there used to be buggers, because when I was little, until my grandparents found out, they used to leave me outside the pub. And I tell you, back in the 50s and 60s, you had proper winters, and they'd leave me in the pub. They would go in the pub, leave me in the car, or no, I've got no brothers or sisters, all by myself with frost inside and outside the windows. And all I can remember was that dread and that fear. But, they did, I don't resent them for that today, but, that had them, because they just dumped me in the car and they just went in, which is fine. I understand through drinking with my own children. So, so it got me quickly. The suicides, the hospitals, the ambulance, the car accidents, drink driving. So I would drink either if I wasn't like in blackout and it was a bit hazy. It's madness. I would drive as fast as I could to get home, so no one would catch me. When I was really, really out of it, I would have one eye open, one closed, and be going down the middle of the road about 5 miles an hour. And I think I'm very grateful, really. I never lost my license and I never ended up in prison. But, I'm just lucky. And I know if I pick up a drink today, it's 37 years next month. I know I'll be dead quick, because my pride will keep me from going back. And actually, I don't want to drink today, and there's no need. I have a program. I have my family, you're my tribe, and I know who to, I got a good connection. I see somebody most days in AA and go for walks. I always try and talk to a newcomer. I still do service now. I'm doing chips again at Maidenhead, and I keep coming back. I keep coming back and putting my arse on the seats, because I've seen people come in, out, never come back. Next thing is their funeral. I seen a young guy in Maidenhead years ago. He came for about 2 or 3 years. He was very quiet and very shy, and he didn't drink, but he just went and hung himself on the back of a bedroom door after the meeting. So it's quite crystal clear to me that this illness will kill you if you don't do the stuff. I mean, some people, it's not for everyone, and I'm sure some of the people that came in when I came in maybe are still sober today. I don't know, but for me, with my this illness, with the way I think, and I'm wired so differently to other people, I know that I need to come, because I suffer with real bad anxiety and depression. So for me, the meetings are essential, and I also do one Al-Anon meeting a week on a Tuesday night at Beaconsfield. So anyway, I had no morals, no moral compass at all, and I met this barmaid who was working when I was a chef in Henley. Very nice, wonderful lady. Husband and her were on the verge of splitting up. She had 4 small children, and I thought it was the mask, you see. So another mask, because each time I'd be a different person. So I thought, well, I marry her. He's moving out, so that'd give me somewhere to live, and this, that, and the other. So I moved in and married her, just like that. Within a year, she was divorced. I was married with 4 small children. So actually, the kids were never mine, but they changed names. But I never actually officially adopted them. So what I did was, I married into an Irish Catholic family of alcoholics. I know. So for me, I'd gone from one sort of like family of alcoholics to another. And so saying that, my wife died sober and her cousin Yvonne died sober. They both had, came to the fellowship. So, and I moved these small field children. I remember thinking, I've got to be a bit responsible now. I've got kids, and and I remember it was like in my head about drinking a bit. It was like a little flicker about it going on, but I just carried on like I was single, really. Because I was in the catering trade. I mean, the booze I just drank because it was for cooking. But as far as I was concerned, it was my booze to drink. It was nothing to do with the sauces or whatever I was cooking. I'd put like a thimble full in the sauce and I'd drink the rest. And I'd still go partying after work, come at home at 2 or 3 in the morning. And and I just carried on like I was single in many ways, and my wife would accompany me to the parties too. And, we had some humdinger parties here because I was actually quite life and soul of the party, but behind the scenes, it could be a very different thing. So we would do the conga in the front door, out the back door, all the way around the house, sometimes with my clothes on, sometimes with my clothes on, and then you'd have the police knocking at the door about disturbance of the peace. Now, I thought this was normal. And I thought that, in the morning at the shop, the old post office up the road, you used to be able to get bottles and you could they would fill them up with sherry, like sweet, dry or medium. And it was like £1 or something, or £1.50. It wasn't very much. And I'd just go and get a bottle of sherry in the morning and start off on that. And I'd be off again. And I just, but I didn't actually have that, like, when I was off, but I didn't have that huge, that real compulsion for it. But anyway, so we still did it. And so instead of like people got the sack, I always changed jobs, but just before I got the sack. If that makes any sense. I sort of knew that things were a bit dodgy or I'd been fiddling too much or whatever. And one point I got put on some medication called Ativan, I think it was. And Dr. Purvis said, no, whatever you do, Philip, don't drink with it. So if anybody said, whatever you do, don't drink with this medication or this cough medicine, well, I would take more than one because I knew if I took 2 or 3 pills or drank half a bottle of cough medicine, then I drank, it would have more of an effect. I never did whatever the prescription said, but it made me really funny in the head. And I remember really, I nearly stabbed somebody that day. I think it was, I was cooking and the owner of the restaurant came in and I'd taken some of these pills and I'd had quite a lot to drink. And he said about, it was his alcohol that I was drinking. And I remember I had this big butcher's knife in my hand. And how I did not stab him, I don't know, but the insanity to kill him was actually there. And I sort of like the knife was coming up and I was sort of trying to hold my hand down, not to do that consequence, to stab him. So, I really was not right in the head. And so I went from one job to the next, and then I wouldn't go into work as the shame. I just would like the fear. So I'd been out like the day before and like the alarm clock would go off to wake me up, and I just couldn't go for fear. I couldn't leave the house, and I lost a few jobs like that. And I remember one employer said to me, but you're a really nice guy, you're good at your job, why didn't you come in, why don't you want to come anymore? And I said, I just don't know. And it was the fear of leaving the house. And so I just carried on. So it was nothing sort of different. I mean, it was the Christmas before last, we were having Christmas lunch, and my youngest said to me, oh, he calls me cute. Do you remember the skip run you used to do with the empties? Skip run? What are you on about? Skip run. He said, we used to have all the empty cans of Carlsberg Special Brew in the back of the car and under the seats. And you used to make me come down to the skip. He said, you just get a pack of 4 on the way down, drink them. We used to take them all out and put them in the skip by the river. Then you used to pick a pack of 4 up on the way up and come home. I have no recollection of this, no recollection. Everybody laughed actually because it was Christmas Day, but I couldn't remember it, And I think when I look back, it's not because I'm old, it's just chunks I don't remember. So I'd be driving along the road, minding my own business in the morning, and the next minute I would like to be in the pub having a drink. And I remember on the way to Marlow, I can't remember the name of the pub. I was in there and I thought, how the fuck did I get here? How did I get here? You know, and it was that automatic control. It was getting me. It was the power was gripping me more. And so I still carried on. And then there was an incident with my wife. And this is like the first brush I had with AA. It must have been about in '87, somewhere around there. And so she just drank all day and wouldn't get up. So I just go and get the cider, and she drank it in bed, and I sort of joined her. But in the end, we had it must have been terrible for Carol, really. So we had four men in white coats come and take her into this big car and take her away to the old Fair Mile at Chelsea, at Molesford. And you know, when I look back, it must have been terrible for Carol being carried out like that. Anyway, so I then had a big row with my mother-in-law, who I couldn't make amends to because she died not long after that, and with cancer. But I did go up to her grave and make my amends that way. But so she sort of came over, and I was going in to see Carol in the Fair Mile. Are you drinking? No, I'm not drinking. No, I'm not drinking. Of course I was. And she said, well, they're quite interested in your drinking too. And I said, well, nothing wrong with my drinking. What's up with them? And I said, nothing wrong with your drinking either. And my alarm bells were ringing. You know, my drinking was being questioned. And so I went another evening, and there was this guy called Tom G. Mick, remember Tom, and been sober a long time. And he'd run the A meeting at Fair Mile. And he didn't say, would you like to come to a meeting? And he didn't say I was an alcoholic, but this was my thinking. So he shook my hand. He said, good evening, Philip. My name is Tom. And my head went, and you're not fucking telling me about my drinking, and I'm not coming to your meeting. My reaction in my head was exactly that. I didn't say it, but that was the trigger. And he said, oh, would you and Carol like to come to a meeting? Nope. I said, we're not coming to that. And I said, she's not coming either. So I convinced Carol it wasn't for us, and certainly wasn't for her. And out she came. And that's when my drinking changed again, because Carol really didn't want to drink. She really didn't want to. And she couldn't have one, because if she had one, she'd gone on a huge binge. So I then still drank daily. So I had to hide it. And a bit to start with when she first came out, I had to hide it. That's right. So I used to hide it in the hair drawer. I'm just going to the shop for some washing up liquid, drink a couple, then get home and God, I need some more. And I'd go back to the shop again. Then she sort of eased up on the not drinking so much. And she sort of got back into the swing of drinking after a few years. And so I made home wine and home beer. My God, I had this big, huge vat of homemade tea wine with the mold, the lemons, the sultanas, fermenting dead flies on top. And, you know, her cousin would come up, Yvonne, and we would drink that and shit through the eye of a needle for about a week. It was dreadful stuff, but it was really potent. And so I got back into the drinking again, and she got her back into the drinking. And then we'd have the big parties. I probably wasn't working at that stage again. And so we were really back to square one before she went into the Fair Mile, which she was, and so was I. So I don't know what really happened. It was a Sunday night in '88. And I didn't know whether I upset one of the kids or something to do with the kids, one of the boys. And they were growing up, but they weren't teenagers or anything. And I woke up on the Monday morning, and Yvonne, her cousin, had been in AA and in and out struggling. And I thought, I really can't do this anymore. And there was a flicker and I thought, it's really not fair on the kids either. There was a moment of clarity, I think, and I can't do this. So I rang Gillian up, who was a lady in the fellowship. And I said, you know, I really can't do this anymore. And she knew who I was once I said my name and mentioned Yvonne. Anyway, so she took me to Pangbourne, was my first meeting. And along I went, and Pangbourne and Henley. Pangbourne on the Monday and Henley on the Thursday were my first two meetings. And I must say, everybody was so friendly, so kind, gave me their phone numbers. I couldn't understand why. And I think probably I didn't feel worthy enough to have their phone numbers. And I could see that they were like on this, they were so happy, and they were on like this parallel in life living. And I was half cocked going in the wrong direction. That's the only way I can describe it. But I knew there was something there. So I sort of kept coming back, and I didn't particularly listen, and I don't know what it was. And Carol was carrying on drinking, and we had this set to about 10 months later, and I picked up again in the morning. And that was July 89. And it was the 24th of July 89. So I've got it tattooed on my hand because my birthday's the 25th. And the minute I had that one, it was like, Christ, it was like worst. I can't describe it. Anybody that's been in and out, it sort of grabbed me even quicker than before. And I couldn't come home because Carol didn't want me here for whatever reason. And so I went and knocked on Mick's door. Mick and Sylvie took me in, and I haven't had a drink since. And that's so my A's birthday is the 25th of July, 89. And Mick was just so kind, just very kind and understanding and warm. He said, but you need to go, it must have been a Wednesday, because he said, go to Henley and share it tomorrow night. And I don't know, the drinking got me quicker, but my head was worse than it was when I came the first time. So that drinking for that 14 hours, my head was more fucked and more buzzy. It was awful. And it took me months and months and months and months to get where I was before I first came. So I shared it at the meeting, and I said that, I had a drink, and I was in service. So I'd done the ashtrays when I first come, then I done the teas and coffees, and I did whatever else I did. And then, so before I drank, I was just coming to do my first chair, and I shared in the meeting, said I had a drink, and Eileen said, when the old timers, you took a drink for me. And my head thought, you old bitch. My thinking's terrible. My old bitch, how dare you say that? And there's me sat here, just had a drink, and you're saying I took a drink for you. That self-centeredness. Anyway, I see today, she's right, So anyway, they made me go back and do the ashtrays again. And I thought, I'm going to bloody sit here this time. It made me, that stubbornness, that self-will actually made me sit there and take it. Not that I had anything to take, but it made me accept that perhaps I was wrong. And I just want to tell you something else about my drink. And I just go back a minute. So one night I'd been out, and our house was never locked. This is the madness of it. Our house is never, ever locked. So I'd been out, up to no good, 3 o'clock in the morning. In my head, I'm locked out, and Carol's never going to have me in the house again. So I break the kitchen window, go to bed. What I remember of it. Next morning, she said, why did you break the window? Why did you break it? What's wrong with you? I said, to get in. But she said, the front door's never locked. We've never locked the front door here. So why did you break the window? That's the insanity in my head. Because the house is never, well, it is now occasionally, but it had never been locked. So the madness of hiding the empty cans in those old metal dustbins, taking the rubbish out, putting them in, putting the rubbish on top, and then the next day taking the rubbish out to check the cans are still there. I mean, this is total insanity. I just thought this was like normal to me anyway. So then I found I couldn't understand the program. I was so bloody deluded. Because I would look at it and it's like, I couldn't get it. I knew I couldn't drink. I knew I didn't want to drink. I always sort of believed I've always had like a spiritual thing, I always went to church as a child. Nobody never told me, but I always went. So I believed in a God. And I couldn't see it in the big book. My God, that just didn't make any sense to me at all. That was like reading fucking Hebrew, ask about face. I'd stare at it, and each sort of sentence would run into each other. But today I look at that book, and I was at a meeting on Sunday, a big book meeting, and this girl, she shared on, I think it was Bill's story, and she pointed out this sentence, and I've been sat there for 37 years nearly, and I've read the big book many times, and she put this sentence across, and I thought, wow, this is amazing stuff. So I'm still learning from the big book. Each time I go to a meeting, I learn something new from it, because my brain is like, it won't absorb all that information, and it always sees everything the wrong way round. So it's my recovery's been very slow. But I had a sponsor, told my secrets the best I could at the time, and became very aware of the steps. As I said, I went to my mother, I made amends, and so there was this barman called Dennis, and it was like in the worst of my drinking. His daughter was a waitress, and Dennis was an alcoholic. He admitted he was an alcoholic, but he hadn't drank for about 2 years. But he didn't have a spiritual way of life. And to upset me when you're working is the worst thing you could do when I was drinking. So anyway, he really, 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 really pissed me off. So big time. And when I get resentful, I get really, really nasty. So I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be so horrible to you, Dennis. You're going to leave this job if it's the last thing I do. His daughter was waitress. She didn't get involved, but she was also an alcoholic. And she died. She was smoking, and she set fire to herself, and she she died, burnt herself to death. And she was one of us. And that's what the autopsy. Anyway, so so Dennis left, and I said to somebody, why is Dennis left? They said, you're such a fucking dick, because she was so horrible to him. And I was really shook that somebody said that to me, but subconsciously I'd made up my mind. So Dennis left, and I carried on drinking that time, and then I got sober, and I'm in Henley in Waitrose car park, and Dennis trots across the car park. And the program sort of, oh, you've got to make your amends, it's Dennis. So this voice came into my head. So I shook his hand, and I said, oh, Dennis, it's really, really good to see you. I said, my drink, oh, you haven't got to tell me, boy. I knew you were one of us. So and I said, well, I am sorry. That's all right. He says, as long as you're all right now. And we had a chat, and he said about Brenda, his daughter dying, and set herself afire with booze. And it's just stuff like that. As the years have gone on with the program, things have dropped into place. I've done several steps 4, and I think I did another one about 4 or 5 years ago. Because for me, it's like things still come up. It's like, it's like a plop. Suitcase comes in and opens, and God, I forgot how. It's something I'd completely forgotten or I'd buried. But it's like so. I'm running out here, so I still keep coming back, and I still do service. However, the last 7 years have been, I think, the most hardest 7 years of my sobriety. So Anita died of throat cancer. She was the first one due to addiction. And then my wife got a really, really, really rare brain disease. Really unusual thing. She died within a year. I had a very disabled stepdaughter, spina bifida. She was end of life when Carol was dying, and I had them both in the house, had carers in. Then she died not long after Carol. Then Christmas Eve, Paul died of advanced cirrhosis of the liver and heart disease. And he'd been up the week before, and I've got a guy that lives with me in the fellowship. And I said, Callum, this isn't good. And I could see he didn't eat anything. He said, I don't eat anymore, Dad. I don't eat anymore. And he had been into AA twice, but I didn't push it because, if anybody told me about AA, I wouldn't have gone. Anyway, and he said the last time, this really isn't for me. It's really not for me. And I just had to leave it there. Anyway, so I knew he wasn't well. And I thought, straight after Christmas, I'm getting you down that doctor's, whether you like it or not. But he died Christmas Eve. He got out of bed and he had this massive, massive heart attack, and his heart and the liver had packed in. So in a way, it was a torturous death, but he didn't end up in hospital on the driver. I've done end of life care for alcoholics, and it's not pleasant. And there was this lady, she had 7 days to live, and her family said, "Oh, we've got some alcohol-free wine for her." And I said, "She'll know." I said, "She'll know." I said, "Why not just give her wine?" I said, "She's got 7 days. That's what the doctor said. 7 days to live. Just let." No, no, no. She can only have alcohol-free wine. And I got into terrible trouble with Sue Ryder for that. But anyway, this is the way I felt about it. But her last words were, "Get me a drink, Philip. Get me a drink." Those were her last words till she died. So I always stress to people, this illness will kill you. But you know, when Paul died Christmas Eve, I said to, I've been going to more meetings than ever since then. I just can't do it again. It's like all the bereavement had caught up with me. In my head was like, I lost my serenity. I lost the serenity and peace of mind. And I'd lost my concentration. I couldn't keep it in the day. My head was buggered. But what I did was I had the tools, and I got a really good sponsor. So I wrote a list like funeral people, doctors, flowers, pension 1, pension 2, pension 3, death certificate. And I did one thing every day. And when I'd done those things, I'd make another list and do the stuff again. And some of the forms, to be honest, I couldn't concentrate to do them. So my sponsor did it. But unfortunately, my grandson's a heroin addict. And since his dad died, he's really, really hit it big time. He's really, really out of hand with it. Now, he's been as well. So he's on the streets about 2 or 3 years ago. I got him off the streets. He went back to his dad's. Now, he came to Twyford and Maidenhead for a bit. And then he stopped coming. But since Paul died, he came to one meeting in Twyford. I think, Stephen, it's about 3 weeks ago. He looks dreadful. And I've got to, for my own sanity, because I'm like, I've got Paul's money and I'm trying to put into a trust, and I'm trying to and attach everything I can from him and let him fall, because he has to have his rock bottom, and I can't get in the way of it. And neither do I want to be involved emotionally, because I just can't do it anymore. I've just had it with all this emotional pain. And I pray for him every morning. He came up and had a pizza the other night, and then it said, "Oh, Granddad, have you got 50 quid I can have?" And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, Adam. So I said, because I still get his universal credit, so I'm waiting to pass that. His mum's going to take over all this stuff. She's the drug dealer, but that's not my problem. So she's going to take it over. And I said, well, I take it out of your universal credit. And then he texted me at the meeting last night, "Oh, I've just got overdrawn at the bank. Can you let me have some money?" And I just ignored it. I thought, no, this is, stop it. I know it's your money I'm getting, but actually you've got to learn, because I'm not going to have your money much longer. It's going to go to your mum. So, you know, you can deal with it that way. It's really painful, because, you know, he lived with us from when he was 5 until he was 12. And I knew when he went, going to his dad, who was an alcoholic, and his mum that's a drug addict, was not a good thing. You know, because they'd split up, they both had their homes in. It was right that Adam went to live with Paul, because that's what he wanted. But I knew then it wouldn't bode well. And so I've just got the youngest one left. It seems all right. And Adam, I'm trying to detach. But I would just say I'm very, very grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's done for me what I could never do for myself. I'm comfortable in my own skin today, most of the time, more or less all the time. I do a reading every day. I usually journal most days. And I pray every morning, lasts for a sober day. And then I do a little reading that Al-Anon gave me at night. It's on a bookmark. It's really nice. And I just take everything in the 24 hours, because that's all I've got, is this 24 hours to do my best, be my best, and accept the things I can't change. And thank you very much for listening. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Philip. Lovely to hear you, my friend. I really appreciate you standing in this evening, man. I wish you well, my friend. And saying all that, I'm going to hand it over to Mick. There you go, Mick.
Okay, Mossy, you take care and look after yourself. Philip, thank you. You know, I knew your wife, I knew Yvonne and all that, and I know you through the meetings, you know, and you know, we're very lucky. I think we're very lucky people because whatever goes wrong in our recovery, there's always someone in a meeting that's been there. And you go and talk to them, and they share with you how they deal with it and dealt with it. Because you was on about like this is a bit silly. Is when my mum died, you know, I used to think she was up in heaven with Jesus, God, with God, and she'd be nudging him and saying, "That's my Mick down there. Keep an eye on him, sort him, look after him." You know, so for me, it was an added thing up in a higher power. But everything I have today has been given to me through this fellowship. You know, I'm not rich in money and that, but I'm rich in life through this fellowship. You know, I see the beauty of things today, and I don't see ugliness no more. You know, I just see the beauty of what's outside, you know, and I just think, crikey, you know, at one time if I look back and when I was at work and he'd booze all over work and it was over a year, we were still finding bottles I had hidden in the garage and round in the stables and things like that. But you know, I don't have to hide. And you were on about masks. I don't have to have a mask today. If you don't like me as I am, that's okay, because I do like me today. And that's what you taught me, the love of this fellowship that you people in this fellowship have given me. Come to the end of the meeting, and Tim's going to read the promises.
First edition of the big book here.
Yeah.
And the promises are on page 96. But however, I'll read them from the screen. I think it'll be easier, even though it's too small for me, so I have to read them here. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. Before we were half through, actually, it says in this, we are going to know a new freedom and happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Thank you, Tim. Well, it's come to the thank yous. I'd like to thank you, Philip, for sharing, and Philip for timekeeping, Ewan for all the work he's doing on here tonight, Tim for doing the promises. Who else was it? Just want to thank everyone for being here. And right, what else? Reminder that we have this meeting on where we have a meeting on 7 days a week at 8:30 a.m. UK time. We also have meeting every Sunday at 6:30 UK time. This is a meditation meeting. On Saturday, we have this meeting of old timers, which is recorded for the history, the archives. And on Thursday evening, we have a meeting at 7:30 UK time. We have the same code meeting for all our meetings. Stick around for fellowship after this meeting. If you want to a breakout room, we'll try and do one for you. Yellow card. Who you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here. And Philip, speaker, would you like to take us out on the Serenity Prayer?
These are mooting. That's it. God, grant me the
After
serenity
to
to
accept
accept the things I cannot change,
courage to change things I can, wisdom to know the difference.
Let thy will, not mine, be done. Thanks for a great share, Philip. Thanks,
Thank
guys,
you,
for being
everyone,
here.
for having me.
Yeah,
God
great
bless
share.
Thank you for
all.
sticking around.